Hey everyone, welcome back. We're diving deep today into a topic that's super relevant whether you're a seasoned dater or just starting out.
Definitely. We're talking about dating red flags, those warning signs that can sometimes be tough to spot when you're caught up in those, first date butterflies.
Exactly. And to guide us, we're looking at dating red flags, top 10 warning signs.
Mm.
Okay, so let's just jump right in. First up is controlling behavior. This one's a classic for a reason, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it can be so sneaky because sometimes it's disguised as like care or concern.
Right, like, oh, honey, I just worry about you so much. But deep down, you're like, wait a minute.
Exactly. Like if they're constantly questioning your whereabouts or who you're hanging out with.
Or they're like trying to dictate what you wear or who you can be friends with.
Yes, that's a huge red flag. A healthy relationship is built on trust and respect, and you should always feel free to be yourself.
Totally. No one wants to feel like they're walking on eggshells all the time.
Right. And if you notice this happening, communication is key. You got to address it head on.
Okay, good point. Next up is disrespect, which honestly is just not cool.
Definitely not. Disrespect can be so subtle sometimes,
Yeah, like little digs at your opinions or interests or making you feel like you're not being heard. It's just, ugh. I've been there, and it's not fun.
It really chips away at your self-esteem. You start to doubt yourself.
Yeah, and it can escalate over time. Those little jabs can turn into full-blown arguments where they just completely dismiss your feelings.
Right. And they might use phrases like, you're overreacting, or that's a stupid idea.
Oh, yeah, I hate that. Like, excuse me, my feelings are valid.
Exactly. So it's super important to set boundaries and let them know that kind of behavior is not acceptable.
Okay, on to jealousy, possessiveness. I think a little jealousy is natural, right? But when does it become a problem?
It becomes a problem when it's like excessive and controlling.
So like checking your phone all the time.
Yeah, constantly accusing you of flirting, trying to isolate you from your friends and family.
Ooh, yeah, that's definitely not healthy. What's a good way to handle that? I mean, you don't want to make them feel insecure, but you also don't want to tolerate that behavior.
It's a tough one, but again, communication is key. You have to reassure them that you care about them, but you also need to be firm about your boundaries.
Like, hey, I love you, but I'm allowed to have friends.
Exactly. You have a right to your own life and relationships.
All right, next up, avoiding communication. Oh my gosh, this one can be so frustrating.
Tell me about it. It's like trying to have a conversation with a brick wall.
You're trying to talk about something important, and they just shut down completely.
The silent treatment, changing the subject, walking away.
Yeah, it's like they're allergic to having any difficult conversations. And that's just not how healthy relationships work.
No, not at all. Open communication is the foundation of any strong relationship.
So how do you deal with someone who just refuses to communicate?
Well, first, you have to try to understand why they're avoiding these conversations. Maybe they're scared of conflict, or maybe they're just not good at expressing their feelings.
Okay, that makes sense.
But whatever the reason, you need to gently encourage them to open up. Let them know it's safe to talk to you about anything. And if they're still resistant, maybe suggest couples counseling.
Okay, on to inconsistency, that hot and cold behavior.
Ugh, that's a tough one. 1 minute they're all over you, and the next they're distant and withdrawn.
It's like an emotional roller coaster. And it can leave you feeling so confused and insecure.
Totally. You never know where you stand with them. One day they're planning your future together, and the next they're barely texting you back.
So how do you address that?
Well, I think it's important to have a conversation about expectations. Like, what does consistency look like for both of you? How often do you want to communicate? What are your needs in a relationship?
Yeah, setting those expectations early on can prevent a lot of heartache down the road. All right, next up is disrespecting boundaries, which is a huge no-no.
Absolutely. Boundaries are so important in any relationship, romantic or otherwise. They're about respecting yourself and what you're comfortable with.
So, like, if you've told them you're not okay with certain types of physical touch or you need some alone time, they need to respect that.
Right. And if they keep pushing those boundaries after you've clearly communicated them, that's a major red flag. It shows a lack of respect for you and your needs.
It's like they're not even listening to you. So how do you deal with someone who just keeps disrespecting your boundaries?
Well, you have to be firm and assertive, reiterate those boundaries and the consequences of crossing them. And if they still don't get it, you might need to distance yourself from the relationship.
It's all about protecting your own well-being, right?
Yeah.
All right, up next is playing the victim. This is when someone constantly blames others for their problems and never takes responsibility for their actions.
Yeah, it's like they're always the one being wronged.
And they never seem to learn from their mistakes. They just keep making the same bad choices and blaming everyone else.
It's a way of avoiding accountability and manipulating others into feeling sorry for them.
It's exhausting to be around someone like that. So how can you tell if someone is genuinely struggling versus using the victim card as a manipulation tactic?
I think it's about looking for patterns. Are they always the victim in every situation? Do they refuse to see their own role in the problem?
And do they ever actually try to change?
Exactly. If they're not willing to put in the work to improve their own lives, then they're probably just using the victim role to get attention or sympathy.
So how do you break free from that dynamic?
Well, you have to stop enabling them. Don't play into their drama. Encourage them to take responsibility for their actions and focus on solutions instead of dwelling on problems.
Good advice. Okay, financial irresponsibility. This one can be tough because money is such a sensitive topic.
It definitely is.
Yeah.
But it's also super important to talk about, especially if you're thinking about a long-term relationship.
Yeah, because financial compatibility is a big deal. So what are some red flags to watch out for?
Well, if they're constantly in debt, racking up credit card bills, or expecting you to bail them out, those are definitely red flags.
Or if they're always borrowing money and never paying it back.
Exactly. That's a big one. It shows a lack of responsibility and respect for your finances.
So how do you bring up financial concerns with your partner without, like, starting a huge fight?
Well, I think it's important to approach it from a place of understanding and collaboration. Talk about your financial goals and values, and try to find ways to work together as a team.
Okay, that makes sense. Teamwork is key in any relationship, right? All right, on to overly critical. We all have our flaws, but constant negativity is just draining.
It really is. No one wants to be with someone who's always putting them down.
It's like they can't see anything good in you.
Yeah, they're always criticizing your appearance, your choices, your accomplishments.
It's like they're trying to shrink you down to fit their mold. So how do you deal with someone who's overly critical?
Well, first, you have to call them out on their behavior. Let them know that their words are hurtful and that you need them to be more supportive.
And if they don't change?
If they continue to be critical, you might need to reevaluate the relationship. You deserve to be with someone who appreciates you for who you are.
That's so true. And last but not least, we have isolation. This one can be really scary because it can be a sign of abuse.
Absolutely. Isolation is a way for an abuser to gain control over their partner.
Yeah, like they start by slowly cutting you off from your friends and family. They might criticize your loved ones or make you feel guilty for spending time with them.
Right. And over time, you become more and more dependent on the abuser.
So what are some signs that you might be being isolated?
Well, if your partner is constantly checking up on you, trying to control who you see and where you go, or making you feel bad for wanting to spend time with other people, those are all red flags.
And what should you do if you're experiencing this?
The most important thing is to reach out for help. Talk to a trusted friend, family member, therapist, or domestic violence hotline.
It's crucial to remember that you're not alone and there are people who can help.
Absolutely. And never be afraid to leave a relationship if you feel unsafe. Your safety and well-being are paramount.
Wow, we covered a lot today. I think the biggest takeaway is that it's so important to trust your gut. If something feels off in a relationship, don't ignore those red flags.
Exactly. Addressing those issues early on can save you a lot of heartache in the long run. And remember, you deserve to be in a healthy, happy, and respectful relationship.
That's such a great point. Thanks so much for sharing your insights today. And to all our listeners out there, remember, you are worthy of love and respect.
Absolutely.
And if you're dating, keep those red flags in mind and always prioritize your own well-being. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, everyone.
See you next time.